back. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
Don't you listen to what the man said. He said,
Excellent choice. Listen to what the man said. Or in other words, huh? That's a member of my family had a whole lot of huh, which was a key.
A whole lot of huh.
Meaning that they weren't hearing what you were saying.
Yeah.
And we're talking about hearing impairment, people losing their hearing. And we have our specialist, Dr. Ted Venema here, is a registered audiologist. And NexGen Hearing, we're going to talk a little bit about what they can do to help overcome some of these problems. So you referenced before the break, Dr. Ted, that you have age-related hearing. And so where does that typically hit?
That usually hits you when you're around 65.
And what goes first?
Treble. You can't hear the high pitches of speech. Like, for example, the letter S, the letter F. If you say those sounds, they're high-pitched compared to A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, the vowels. So when you lose high pitches, you can't tell what the person said. Did the person say kittens or mittens? Did they say dishes or fishes? Okay? Because you're losing the pops and the of speech. And so you begin to have trouble hearing in crowds. You have
trouble with treble.
Trouble with treble.
Yeah.
It's exactly. And usually it's the significant other that notices it. Because hearing loss,
and that's what you get, huh?
Yep. Hearing loss impacts relationships. Because
big time.
Communication.
Absolutely. As I know, in one of our family members met a new person in their life, and this person was repeating everything many times and said, that's it. We're getting you tested. And now that person has hearing devices. So it's great.
Yeah.
And it's changed the relationship.
It does. It truly does.
It's exhausting for the person that has to keep asking.
Yep. Hearing is the one sense that necessarily doesn't just involve the person who has it, but it involves others around him or her.
And you get this sort of situation where people retreat into themselves.
Yes, they do.
They get to the family Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it is, and they're sitting around a table. There's lots of clanging of glasses and cutlery and people talking over each other. And they can't distinguish that, so they retreat into themselves.
That's right. It's lonely. It can lead to a lot of social isolation because they're sick of being answering the wrong punchline to a joke. They know they've been around that corner. They really don't want to admit it, but they know it. And so they say, you guys go on out and have a good time. I'll stay back and read a book.
And you go and visit that person, and the TV is up to 11.
Yep.
And that's a telltale sign too, right?
Yep. And a lot of hearing losses. You know, they don't necessarily want sounds louder. They just want clarity.
Sure.
So they'll say young people mumble, and it's because they can't hear the high pitches again.
Or if they're faced the other direction, you're making a cup of tea and you're looking at the counter and not to the person. Yep. Everything's
For example, if I roll up my piece of paper here like a horn. Okay. And if I talk into the wide end of the horn. I'm gonna start sounding like this.
Yeah.
So now, if you take your paper and make some noise, start crackling, you're gonna have a hard time hearing what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You see?
Good.
So what a hearing aid has to do for that person, instead of this, the hearing aid would want to emphasize the treble frequencies. Now I'm talking into the small.
This is a party trick. I'm going to start using this trick. That's
good.
So
you want the hearing aid to emphasize the treble, so the person can hear that better. So
that's a great idea.
That's what hearing aids do, is they lift up. Usually they're tuned, like your equalizer analogy. They're tuned to emphasize the treble more than the bass.
Sure.
Because when you hear the bass pretty well, like most elderly people hear bass pretty well, when you raise up the loudness of your voice, you're raising up the bass. If I start talking louder, it's the bass frequencies that are getting louder. It's not the treble frequencies. I mean, when people talk louder, they're not talking like this. You know, they're
talking like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's a great story.
So
that's great.
Yeah, the loudness isn't always it. It's emphasizing specific pitches, and those are usually treble.
And I'm sure there's people listening to this show right now that say, I can't hear those. And, you know, and the thing is, in your car, for example, if someone's listening in their car, they can put up the treble.
Yes, exactly.
And they can compensate that maybe a little bit with their television as well. But with speech, with talking to humans, that's not the case.
You can't do that. Yep.
All right, so that's age-related hearing loss.
That's correct.
And the trouble with trouble, you get older, and then exposure to noise. Right?
Noise does the same thing, only before you're 65.
Right.
If you can hear someone's headphones and you're not wearing the headphones, imagine the decibel level smashing against the drum. the eardrum of that person. So kids listening to their devices stand in danger of noise-induced hearing loss, which is permanent as well. It's
Okay.
just like it's like getting older hearing loss ahead of your time.
When we were kids,
Yep.
you had your stereo set up
Yep.
in your bedroom. You had those two big speakers.
Yep.
The bigger the speakers, the
Yep,
better.
sure.
And you would crank up
Yep.
your Led Zeppelin or whatever, right? And you would play it.
Yep.
And that was super loud.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that worse having a big speaker in your bedroom really loud or
No.
having the headphone right next to your ear?
Same thing.
It doesn't matter.
It's
Because I always think that because if it's right next to your ear, that's got to
Well,
be worse.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, if you're at a concert and you're not wearing headphones, we remember, been
Yeah.
a long time since the rock and roll. You're
Yeah,
at the Led and you're hearing the ringing in your ears the next morning.
Yeah.
Because guess what? You've had noise exposure.
Mm.
So you weren't wearing headphones, but you were still listening to about 120 decibels, you know. So noise-induced hearing loss will kill off inner ear hair cells or nerve endings just as surely as aging will naturally do that by itself.
So someone that works in a loud factory or
Yes.
works,
Yep.
driving a loud truck all
Yeah.
day.
I give the analogy, we don't stare in the sun because everybody knows if you stare at the sun, you'll burn your eyes out.
Okay.
But somehow people think the ear is impervious to the ravages of noise. And they're nuts because guess what? Noise is pollution. And noise-induced hearing loss, it depends on the loudness of the noise and the length of time you were exposed to it.
Okay, so
Ah.
your ears can take a short-term exposure to loud noise.
Yep. You can. 8 hours a day of 90 decibels or greater, you stand in danger of permanent noise-induced hearing loss. Okay, so most workplaces know today. I mean, occupational safety and health demands that when the decibel level is over a certain amount, the workers have to wear earplugs. And so we're better at it today because the best way is prevention. Prevention's worth a pound of cure, an ounce. So
what is tinnitus or tinnitus?
that comes along with guess what? Noise-induced hearing loss.
And that's the only time.
Nope, but noise-induced hearing loss is the hearing loss that is most commonly associated with tinnitus.
So one of the most famous rockers, and this is happening to the baby boomer rocker
Yep.
generation, was Pete Townsend from
Yep.
The Who.
Yep.
Had to stop. He's back on the road. I'm not sure how he's getting around it, but playing because he was exposed to such loud.
Yeah, he's got permanent treble hearing loss, and what comes often with that is tinnitus, the ringing in the ear.
So
And,
what causes
boy.
the ringing in the ear?
Oh, great question.
Because
It's
they say it can drive people mad.
Oh, it can drive you bonkers, and it's hair cell damage. Now, some people you can have hearing loss without tinnitus. Okay.
Okay.
So it makes sense that you can also have tinnitus without having hearing loss.
Oh.
So some people with excellent normal hearing will have tinnitus.
Mm.
And the reasons why are usually some neural type of imbalance between the cochlear or inner ear hair cells and the gain or the volume that the brain is attending to that inner ear. It's a hearing is a two-way street, just like everything, all your senses are a two-way street. You know, you take in sensory information and your brain modulates how you handle it. Now, tinnitus is somehow an imbalance in brain going and ear going neural information.
So when you talk about the
Boy.
eye, you go outside and it's very bright. Your
Yeah.
pupils close
right.
down,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then they dilate when you're
That's
in,
right.
in a dark space.
That's right.
So your ears are always adjusting with
Your
your brain.
ears adjust as well. Okay?
Okay.
Your hair cells of your inner ear are doing really cool things. I mean, there's so at any rate, you have two sets of hair cells in your inner ear, inner and outer. And inner hair cells send all info to your brain. Outers modulate how the inner hair cells are working. So, when you've got problems in the balance thereof, you'll have ringing in the ear, and only you hear it. It's not something that a person can put his or her ear up to you and go, oh, I hear that sound.
I've had, I don't have tinnitus or tinnitus, but I have had instances where you have this steady frequency for about a minute.
Yep, me too.
And then all of a sudden it goes away.
Yep, and some say that that's the sound of one hair cell signing off for good.
Really?
Thank
it's like
God
a shooting star.
Yes, you've got about 15,000 hair cells in each inner ear.
Sure.
So as long as that doesn't happen to you 15,000 times.
Well, I can still hear you. I'm not at the huh?
But I too have had that where you just get this.
That's exactly what it is.
And then all of a sudden it just disappears like a
So
cane.
is that kind of like the beginnings of this?
I don't think so. Tinnitus is usually that's just a transient thing. But tinnitus, this one thing we should mention about this is right away is that the actual loudness of one's tinnitus is not always all that loud. You know what it is? The person is layering it like an oyster layers a grain of sand and makes a pearl. You're reacting. You're making a reaction formation psychologically. And you're building it up and you're building it up and it's really aggravating. And then you
It's
become
like a stone in your shoe.
Yes.
Yeah.
How badly are you going to let someone snoring bother you? Or how badly the dripping of a faucet? How badly are you going to let that bug you? And so that's a lot of the treatment of tinnitus is psychologically oriented. The goal is, can I just get the client to think of it as a nuisance? It's just a nuisance. It's not dangerous. It's not going to hurt you. But when someone isn't being helped with tinnitus, he or she is frightened of it. They're like, the fear center of your brain is perked up.
And it's so loud when you're lying in bed and there's no noise in the house.
Exactly.
And all you hear is this this ringing.
And when people notice it mostly at night when it's quiet. And guess what? Hearing aids are accused of picking up background noise. Well, guess what? The background noise that hearing aids picks up will mask or cover your tinnitus.
Ah, so that's the final question is how can a hearing aid help?
Yeah. So we can talk a lot about that, but there's approaches to tinnitus. And one's called masking and the other one is psychological, and we can get to those later. But you're right that tinnitus is noticed mostly in quiet.
All right, we'll do that when we come back after the break. We're speaking with a registered audiologist, Dr. Ted Venema. We're here with NexGen Hearing and looking for solutions as well. So we'll get to that as we go through the show. You're listening to Boomer Life on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.